The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
We already knew that the Prime Minister liked to give tax dollars to his favourite consulting company, McKinsey, a company that helps supercharge drug overdose deaths as part of the opioid crisis. But today we learned from the Auditor General that it's far more money than thought. It was 200 million Canadian tax dollars for this one company. 90% of those contracts didn't follow government rules, 70% of them without a competitive process, 100% of them with the NDP voting in favour. Wow. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister commit here and now no more money for McKinsey?
Again, I asked members, and I've already asked a member from Timmins James Bay if he could please not comment while other members are speaking, so that way we can all hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, obviously the taxpayers deserve to get value for money, which is why we've continued to strengthen our oversight and the measures whereby public servants grant contracts, including to outside consultants. We've reduced those numbers. We're making sure that we're able to both grow the economy and fight climate change at the same time as we ensure value for money. And we will, of course, continue to work with the Auditor General and her recommendations as we move forward. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, we are committed to delivering more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians as we fight climate change with the Canada Carbon Rebate.
Hear, hear. From Calgary, Midnapore.
The AG report proves this Prime Minister is not worth the cost or the corruption. This NDP Liberal government spent $200 million on McKinsey, which is just another example of this Prime Minister favouring his insider friends. The AG stated this was a flagrant disregard for procurement rules as the government sole sourced with no justification and competitive processes were changed to favour McKinsey. The clear favouritism is just one more example of this government choosing their friends over integrity. Why has this Prime Minister been caught time and time again red-handed, giving his friends lucrative contracts?
The Honourable Minister for Public Services and Procurement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and we thank my colleague for asking this important question, which allows me to thank again the Auditor General for her important work on this topic. The report comes to similar conclusions as the report that were released by the government last year, and based on those previous findings, we have been acting for more than a year to end the standing offers with McKinsey and all similar companies, which also introduces stricter requirements for departments doing their own contracting authorities.
The Honourable Member from Calgary, Midnapore.
Dominic Barton, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost or corruption. Dominic Barton is the former global head of McKinsey who was handpicked by the PM to be the Canadian ambassador to China and the chair of the Economic Advisory Council. So it's no surprise that after 2016, McKinsey contracting began to go up and up with few signs of stopping. He even joined a meeting between McKinsey and the Canada Infrastructure Bank while he was the ambassador, a meeting he hid from members of committee. Why should Canadians tolerate a Prime Minister who promotes his rich friends and a government run by McKinsey?
The Honourable Minister for Public Works, Public Services and Procurement.
Mr. Speaker, as I just said in English, but I can repeat in French, we are very grateful to the AG for her hard work on this file. Now, the report has similar conclusions to the report published by the government last year, but we will continue to consider the recommendations. For about a year, bids for tender for McKinsey and similar businesses have been cancelled, and we will continue to make requirements stricter for departments with these types of contracting processes.
Member from Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
The Auditor General's report proves that after 9 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost or corruption. In her audit of McKinsey, the AG found this Liberal government broke the rules, showed clear favoritism, and could not demonstrate value for money. This Prime Minister needs to take responsibility. Almost $200 million was awarded to McKinsey. Contracts were rigged, Liberal insiders got rich, and taxpayers are on the hook. Will the Prime Minister finally ban McKinsey from government contracting?
The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've already answered this question multiple times now. I would just add that in addition to what I've said, these contracts have been closely examined several times, including by the Auditor General, and no indication of political interference was ever found. But talking of contracts, Mr. Speaker, may I talk about dental care, about which the Conservative leader has nothing to say because he believes and claims that it doesn't exist. 2 million seniors in Canada, Mr. Speaker, have already registered with dental. Now, why is the Conservative leader misinforming and hurting seniors by telling them it doesn't exist?
The honourable member from Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
The Auditor General's report proves once again that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost and the corruption. Now, Liberals love McKinsey, and apparently all is fair in love and government contracting. Most of these $200 million in McKinsey contracts didn't follow the rules. In almost half, it wasn't clear that the contract was needed. And in some cases, the government even rigged the process to favor McKinsey. Why do these Liberals show such affection for McKinsey, but such disdain for Canadian taxpayers?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, that question has already been answered several times by my colleague, but I am glad to hear the Conservatives, albeit obliquely, talking about income inequality in our society. It's a concern that we share. And the good news for the Conservatives is they have the opportunity to support us and to support our increase in the capital gains inclusion rate, a way to ask those at the very top to help the Canadian middle class. Let's see if the Conservatives will do it.
Speaker. The Honourable Member for Terrebonne. The Auditor General's report on the contracts awarded to McKinsey by the government has just been released. 97 contracts worth over $200 million. More importantly, we learned that 71% of these contracts were awarded without a call for tender. 9 of the 10 departments and 8 of the 10 Crown corporations involved broke the rules. The AG even points out that this is a widespread problem. How can the Liberals increase the public service by 40% whilst at the same time relying on untendered contracts with private firms? The Honourable Minister for Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A great opportunity once again to thank and commend the work undertaken by the Auditor General. Thank you for her conclusions. They are similar to those we have already heard over the past few months. These are conclusions that have allowed us over the past few months to take into account these conclusions to put an end to orders with McKinsey and any other similar organisation that also involves stricter parameters for all departments that have private contracts. The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General's report also shows that the use of McKinsey has skyrocketed since the Liberals came to power. But, I mean, we'd already noticed that. But for several of these contracts, the departments were unable to prove that all the consultants had the required security clearance. Yet McKinsey ended up with both hands in the pockets of public services, immigration, Trans Mountain, and even national defence. How can the Liberals tolerate their own rules being bent and circumvented even when it comes to security? The Honourable Minister for Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and the member is right to indicate 2 things. The first of which is security, the second of which are expenses. Let's just start with expenses. The President of the Treasury Board has been very clear. We are revising by 15% contracts to give the public service even more capacity to better serve Canadians. With regard to security, the Auditor General was very clear. We have to be better able to share and store this information.